The pool club was blazing hot that Saturday afternoon, the kind of heat that makes asphalt shimmer and smart men stay indoors. But there I was, Danny Mitchell, standing over a smoking grill with sweat dripping into my eyes, because my wife Jessica had decided we needed to maintain our social presence. Translation: she wanted to parade around in her new bikini while I played the dutiful husband. I should have known something was wrong when she spent 3 hours getting ready for a pool party. 3 hours? For what? To get wet and eat burgers? But Jessica always had her reasons, and I'd learned over our 15 years of marriage that questioning those reasons only led to lectures about my limited social intelligence. The ring box in my cargo shorts felt heavier with each passing minute. Tonight was supposed to be special. I'd planned to propose again. Yeah, again. Because Jessica had been dropping hints about wanting a real engagement with a proper ring this time. Our original proposal had been in a Denny's parking lot after my shift at the garage, back when we were young and broke and thought love conquered all. Apparently, love needed better financing. "Danny, honey, could you grab me another mojito?" Jessica's voice carried across the pool deck, sweet as artificial vanilla. She was floating on an inflatable swan, her auburn hair fanned out like she was posing for a magazine. Which, knowing Jessica, she probably was, at least for her Instagram. I wiped my hands on my apron and headed to the bar. The pool club wasn't exactly country club material, but it was the fanciest place in our Rust Belt town of Millbrook. Jessica had insisted we join last year, right after she got promoted to senior paralegal at Reynolds & Associates. The membership fees ate up most of my profits from Mitchell's used cars. But appearances matter in the legal world, she'd explained. That's when I saw him. Chad Brennan, Jessica's ex-boyfriend from college, strutting across the deck like he owned the place. All 6'2" of artificially enhanced muscle, spray tanned to perfection, wearing swim trunks that probably cost more than my weekly grocery budget. His Instagram bio claimed he was a fitness influencer and lifestyle coach, which translated to lives off his parents' trust fund while posting shirtless selfies. "Well, well, Danny boy," Chad's voice boomed across the deck. "Didn't expect to see you here. Thought you'd be at the lot, hawking those rust buckets." Muh. I forced a smile and kept walking. Chad had this way of making every interaction feel like a pissing contest, and I'd learned not to engage. But then I heard Jessica's laugh, that high, musical sound she used to make when we were dating, before it got replaced by sighs and eye rolls. "Chad! Oh my God, I can't believe you're here." Jessica practically launched herself off the swan, swimming over to where Chad was now standing waist-deep in the pool. "You look amazing. Have you been training for another competition?" I stopped dead in my tracks, mojito ingredients forgotten. Jessica was running her hands over Chad's chest, right there in front of everyone, in front of me. "You should see his abs," she announced to the gathering crowd, her voice carrying that particular tone she got when she'd had too many drinks. "Now that's what a real man's body looks like." The pool deck went quiet. Not silent, the filter still hummed, kids still splashed in the shallow end. But that specific kind of quiet that happens when someone says something they shouldn't have. I could feel eyes on me, waiting to see how the husband would react to being publicly humiliated. The ring box suddenly felt like it weighed 50 pounds. "Jess," I called out, trying to keep my voice level. "Your drink." She didn't even look at me. "Just put it on the table, honey." Chad was telling me about his new supplement line. "Did you know he's making 6 figures now?" Chad's grin was pure predator. "That's right, Danny. Turned my passion into profit. You should try it sometime, though I guess selling cars is more your speed." I set the mojito down harder than necessary, ice cubes jumping. "At least I work for a living." "Danny," Jessica's voice carried a warning, the same tone she used when I embarrassed her at her work functions. "Chad's a successful entrepreneur." "Right. Taking shirtless photos is very entrepreneurial." The crowd was definitely watching now. Mrs. Patterson from down the street had her phone out, probably already composing her Facebook post about the drama at the pool club. Our 15-year-old daughter, Ava, looked up from her own phone long enough to roll her eyes at both of us. "Dad, you're being weird," she muttered, not bothering to remove her earbuds. Chad stepped closer to Jessica, his hand finding her waist underwater. "Some people just don't understand the hustle, babe." "Babe," he called my wife babe, and she didn't correct him. That's when I noticed Jessica's phone on the table next to her drink. The screen was lit up with notifications, and the angle was just right for me to see the preview of a text message. "Can't wait for tonight. Room 237, just like we planned." The sender was listed as C. Kang. My chest felt tight, like someone had wrapped steel cables around my ribs and started cranking. 15 years of marriage, and she was texting her ex about hotel rooms at our pool club, while I stood there with an engagement ring in my pocket like the world's biggest fool. "You know what?" I said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "You two seem busy. I'll just head home and let you catch up." I turned and walked toward the exit, leaving the grill smoking and Jessica's mojito sweating on the table. Behind me, I could hear the whispers starting, the excited murmur of people who'd just witnessed the opening act of what promised to be spectacular relationship drama. "Danny, wait!" Jessica called, but there was more annoyance than concern in her voice. I kept walking. The ring box bounced against my leg with each step, a reminder of just how badly I'd misread the situation. But as I reached my truck, something shifted inside me. The hurt was still there, sharp and bitter, but underneath it was something else. Something that felt almost like relief. Because now I knew exactly who I was dealing with, and if Jessica wanted to play games, well, she was about to learn that this small-town mechanic had a few tricks of his own. I pulled out my phone and took a screenshot of the pool club's member directory. Then I started the truck and drove home, already planning my next move. She wanted a villain? Fine. I'd give her one hell of a show. The house felt different when I walked through the door that night. Same furniture, same family photos on the mantle, same stack of Jessica's legal briefs on the kitchen counter. But everything had a hollow quality, like I was looking at a movie set instead of my life. I sat at the kitchen table and pulled out Jessica's phone. She'd left it behind in her rush to console Chad about my inappropriate behavior. The lock screen showed 17 new messages, and I knew her passcode because she'd never bothered to change it from our anniversary date. Apparently, some traditions die hard. What I found made my stomach turn. Months of messages, dozens of photos, plans for weekend getaways that coincided with Jessica's work conferences, detailed discussions about my shortcomings, physical, financial, and otherwise. Chad calling me the obstacle, Jessica referring to me as dead weight she'd eventually cut loose. But the worst part was how they mocked me. Screenshots of my texts to Jessica, shared with Chad so they could laugh together. My attempts at romance, my concerns about our marriage, my hopes for our future, all of it reduced to entertainment for their affair. "Dad?" Ava's voice made me look up. She was standing in the doorway, still in her pool club outfit, studying me with those sharp green eyes she'd inherited from her mother. "Mom's freaking out about her phone. Says you stole it." "I found it," I corrected, closing the message thread. She left it on the table when she decided Chad was more interesting than her husband. Ava shifted uncomfortably. At 15, she was old enough to understand what was happening but young enough to wish she didn't have to deal with it. "Are you guys getting divorced?" The question hit me like a punch to the gut, not because I hadn't considered it, but because hearing it from my daughter made it real. "I don't know, sweetheart. Your mom and I have some things to work out. She's been weird lately," Ava admitted, sitting down across from me. "Always on her phone, always getting dressed up for work stuff, and she's been really mean to you." I reached across the table and squeezed her hand. "That's not your problem to worry about. But it is, though." Her voice was smaller now, more like the little girl she used to be. "Because if you guys split up, everything changes. And I like our life. I like our house and our stupid pool club membership and the way you make pancakes on Sunday mornings." My throat felt tight. "Whatever happens between your mom and me, you'll always be the most important thing in my life." "That won't change." She nodded, but I could see the doubt in her eyes. Kids aren't stupid. They know that divorce changes everything, no matter what the adults promise. Jessica came home an hour later, storming through the front door like an avenging angel. "Where's my phone, Danny?" "Kitchen table," I replied without looking up from the TV. "Right where you left it." She rushed past me, and I heard her frantically typing, probably warning Chad that I'd had access to her messages. Too late for that, but I didn't see any point in telling her what I'd already discovered. "We need to talk," she announced, returning to the living room with her phone clutched in her hand. "Do we? Your behavior today was completely inappropriate. Chad is an old friend, and you embarrassed me in front of everyone." I muted the TV and turned to face her. Jessica was still beautiful at 38, still had that sharp intelligence that had attracted me in the first place. But looking at her now, I realized I'd been seeing what I wanted to see instead of what was actually there. "An old friend," I repeated. "Is that what we're calling it?" Her cheeks flushed, but she held her ground. "I don't know what you're implying, but room 237, I said quietly. "Tonight, just like you planned." The color drained from her face. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then Jessica lifted her chin in that defiant gesture I'd once found endearing. So you went through my phone. That's a violation of privacy, Danny. And screwing your ex-boyfriend is a violation of our marriage vows. But here we are. She sat down on the opposite end of the couch, suddenly looking exhausted. It's not what you think. Really? Because I think you've been cheating on me for months. I think you've been planning to leave me. And I think you've been sharing our private conversations with Chad so you two could have a good laugh about what a pathetic loser I am. Jessica's silence was answer enough. Why? I asked. 15 years, Jess. We have a daughter together. We built a life together. Why throw it all away for some muscle-bound Instagram model? Because I'm tired, she said finally. Tired of pretending this is enough. Tired of living in this house, in this town, married to a man who thinks owning a used car lot is the height of ambition. Her words stung, but they also clarified things. So this is about money. It's about respect. When I tell people what my husband does for a living, I see the look in their eyes. Pity, like I settled for less than I deserved. And Chad represents what you deserve? Chad has ambition. He's building something. He's not content to sell rust buckets to desperate people for the rest of his life. I stood up, suddenly needing distance from her. Those rust buckets put food on our table and paid for your law school. They bought this house and funded your precious pool club membership. And I'm grateful for that. But gratitude isn't love, Danny. It's not passion. So you decided to find passion with your ex-boyfriend. I decided to stop settling. The conversation continued for another hour, but nothing changed. Jessica wasn't sorry. She was annoyed at being caught. She didn't want to work on our marriage. She wanted permission to end it without looking like the bad guy. By the time she went upstairs to bed, I'd made my decision. If Jessica wanted out, I wouldn't stop her, but I'd be damned if I was going to make it easy. I spent the rest of the night at my laptop, researching divorce law in our state, community property, asset division, custody arrangements, all the practical details of dismantling a life. By dawn, I had a plan. Jessica wanted to play games? Fine. But she was about to learn that I'd been underestimated my entire life, and I was tired of it too. Monday morning brought the first real test of my resolve. Jessica left for work early, claiming she had depositions to prepare. But I knew she was meeting Chad for breakfast at the Riverside Diner. I'd seen the text come in while she was in the shower. I waited until her BMW was out of sight, then made my first call. Reynolds and Associates. How may I help you? Hi, this is Danny Mitchell, Jessica Mitchell's husband. I need to speak with Mr. Reynolds about a personal matter involving his employee. The receptionist put me on hold for 3 minutes. When Reynolds picked up, his voice was cautious. Mr. Mitchell, is everything all right? That depends on your definition of all right, sir. I'm calling to inform you that my wife has been using sick days and work conferences to conduct an extramarital affair. I have documentation if you're interested. The silence stretched long enough that I wondered if he'd hung up. Finally, I see. And you're telling me this because? Because I respect your firm's reputation. And I thought you should know that one of your employees is using company time and resources for personal activities that could reflect poorly on your business. Another pause. I appreciate your concern, Mr. Mitchell. I'll look into the matter. I hung up feeling only slightly guilty. Jessica had made this bed. Now she could lie in it. My second call was to our bank. As joint account holders, I had every right to move our money into a separate account, one that Jessica couldn't access. It wasn't stealing. It was protecting our assets during what was clearly going to be a contentious divorce. The third call was to my lawyer, Tom Bradley, who'd handled the paperwork when I bought the car lot. Tom, I need to discuss divorce proceedings, and I need to know how to protect my business. Jesus, Danny. I'm sorry to hear that. Jessica seemed like a lot of things, I interrupted. Can you see me today? By noon, I had divorce papers ready to file and a clear understanding of my rights. Tom had been thorough, explaining everything from asset protection to custody arrangements. The meeting had cost me $800, but it was the best money I'd ever spent. That afternoon, I drove to the pool club. Chad's red Camaro was parked in the lot, and I could see him through the fence, lounging by the pool with Jessica. She was supposed to be at work, but apparently her deposition had been rescheduled. I parked next to Chad's car and got out my keys. The scratch I carved into his driver's side door was deep enough to require professional repair, but not quite deep enough to constitute vandalism. Just an unfortunate accident that could have happened to anyone parked in a crowded lot. Then I took photos of Chad and Jessica together, time-stamped and geotagged. and sent them to Jessica's work email with the subject line, Sick Day Activities. My phone rang 5 minutes later. What the hell is wrong with you? Jessica's voice was pure fury. I'm not sure what you mean. You keyed Chad's car. Did I? That's terrible. These parking lots can be so dangerous. And you sent photos to my work email. I thought Mr. Reynolds might be concerned about your health. You looked surprisingly energetic for someone too sick to work. The line went quiet except for Jessica's heavy breathing. When she spoke again, her voice was ice cold. You're going to regret this, Danny. And probably, I agreed. But not as much as you're going to regret underestimating me. I hung up and drove home, where I found Ava in the kitchen making a sandwich. She looked up when I walked in, her expression unreadable. Mom called, she said. She's really mad at you. I imagine she is. She said you're trying to ruin her life. I sat down across from her, suddenly feeling every one of my 40 years. Ava, there are things happening between your mom and me that you don't need to worry about. But I need you to know that I'm not the bad guy here. But you are being mean to her. I'm protecting our family. Sometimes that looks mean from the outside. She considered this while chewing her sandwich. Are you getting divorced? Probably. Will I have to choose sides? The question broke my heart. No, sweetheart. You'll never have to choose sides. Your mom and I both love you, and that won't change no matter what happens between us. But even as I said it, I wondered if it was true. Divorce had a way of turning children into weapons, and Jessica had never been above using whatever advantage she could find. That evening, Jessica came home with Chad in tow. They walked into our house like they owned it, Chad's presence a deliberate provocation. Danny, Jessica announced, Chad and I have something to tell you. I looked up from my dinner, taking in Chad's smug expression and Jessica's defiant posture. Let me guess, you're in love, you're leaving me, and you want me to make it easy for you. Actually, Chad said, we want you to buy out Jessica's share of this house, so we can start fresh. I almost choked on my beer. You want me to what? The house is worth about $200,000, Jessica said. Half of that is mine. I'm willing to sign it over to you for $100,000 cash, so you can run off with your boyfriend, so I can start the life I should have had years ago. I set down my beer and really looked at them. Chad with his perfect hair and expensive clothes. Jessica with her carefully applied makeup and designer purse. They looked like they were posing for a magazine spread about successful young couples. No, I said simply. No. Chad stepped forward, all that gym-built muscle suddenly seeming threatening. I don't think you understand the situation, Danny. I understand it perfectly. My wife is cheating on me with her ex-boyfriend, and now they want me to pay for the privilege of being discarded. The answer is no. Be reasonable, Jessica said. This doesn't have to get ugly. I laughed, a sound with no humor in it. Ugly? Jess, you brought your boyfriend into our home, in front of our daughter, to demand I pay you to leave me. We're way past ugly. That's when I noticed Ava standing in the doorway, her face pale and shocked. She'd heard everything. Mom? Her voice was small and confused. Are you really leaving Dad for him? Jessica's composure cracked for just a moment. Sweetheart, this is complicated. It's not complicated, I interrupted, standing up. Your mother is having an affair, and she wants me to pay her to continue having it somewhere else. Chad, you need to leave my house, now, or what? Chad's chest puffed out like a rooster's. You'll make me? I smiled, and something in my expression made him take a step back. Chad, I own a used car lot in a town full of people who know me and trust me. You're a pretty boy from out of town who's screwing a married woman. If you want to test me in my own house, in front of my daughter, go right ahead. But I promise you won't like how it ends. Chad looked to Jessica for support, but she was staring at Ava, finally realizing the damage she'd done. The moment stretched until Chad's nerve broke. This isn't over, he muttered, heading for the door. Yes, it is, I replied. At least the part where you're welcome in my house. After he left, Jessica and I stood in our kitchen, 15 years of marriage reduced to the space between us and the weight of our daughter's disappointed stare. Pack a bag, I told Jessica quietly. If you want to be with him, go be with him. But don't do it here. She nodded, tears finally starting to fall. Danny, I don't. Just don't. As she went upstairs to pack, I put my arm around Ava and held her while she cried. Outside, I could hear Chad's Camaro roaring to life, the engine sound angry and frustrated. Tomorrow, I'd file the divorce papers. Tonight, I'd comfort my daughter and start figuring out how to rebuild our lives. But first, I had one more call to make. Mrs. Patterson from down the street answered on the second ring. "Danny, is everything all right?" I heard shouting. "Everything's fine, Mrs. Patterson. But I thought you should know that Jessica and I are separating. She'll be staying elsewhere for a while." "Oh my, I'm so sorry to hear that." "Thank you. I just wanted you to hear it from me before the rumors started." By morning, the entire neighborhood would know. In a town like Millbrook, reputation mattered, and I intended to control the narrative from the start. Jessica wanted a new life. She could have it. But she discovered that burning bridges had consequences, and some fires spread farther than you planned. 3 weeks later, I was discovering that being right didn't make being alone any easier. Jessica had moved into Chad's apartment across town, taking half our belongings and most of my peace of mind with her. Ava was staying with me during the week and spending weekends with her mother, an arrangement that satisfied no one but kept the lawyers happy. The divorce proceedings were uglier than I'd expected. Jessica had hired Sandra Kellerman, the most aggressive family law attorney in the county, and they were fighting me on everything from asset division to custody arrangements. My used car lot was under scrutiny, my parenting was being questioned, and every financial decision I'd made in the past 5 years was being dissected by forensic accountants. But I wasn't backing down. Tom Bradley might not have been as flashy as Sandra Kellerman, but he was thorough, and he'd helped me document everything. Jessica's affair, her misuse of work time, her attempts to hide assets. It was all there in black and white. The confrontation I'd been expecting finally came on a Thursday evening. I was closing up the lot when Chad's Camaro pulled into the driveway, followed by Jessica's BMW. They got out together, and I could see they meant business. "Danny," Jessica called out, her voice carrying across the empty lot. "We need to talk." I finished locking the office door and walked over to where they were standing. Chad had his arms crossed, trying to look intimidating. Jessica was holding a manila folder that I suspected contained legal documents. "What can I do for you folks?" I asked, keeping my tone pleasant. "You can stop being a vindictive asshole," Chad said. "This whole thing has gone far enough." "Has it? Because from where I'm standing, we're just getting started." Jessica stepped forward, opening the folder. "Danny, I'm prepared to offer you a settlement. You keep the house and the business. I take my car and my personal belongings, and we split custody of Ava 50-50. And in return, you stop trying to destroy my reputation. You call off whatever investigation you've got running on my work activities. You let me get on with my life." I pretended to consider the offer while studying their faces. Chad looked confident, like he was used to getting his way through intimidation. Jessica looked tired, older somehow, like the stress of the past few weeks had aged her. "That's an interesting proposal," I said finally. "But I have a counteroffer." "We're listening," Jessica said. "You admit to adultery in the divorce filing. You agree to supervised visitation with Ava until she's 18. You pay me back the $15,000 you've spent on your boyfriend over the past 6 months. Yes, I have the credit card statements. And you publicly apologize for what you've put our daughter through." Chad's face turned red. "Are you out of your mind?" "Actually, I'm thinking more clearly than I have in years." "Danny," Jessica's voice was pleading now. "Be reasonable. I made mistakes, but I don't deserve to be destroyed over them." "Don't you?" I pulled out my phone and scrolled to a screenshot I'd saved. "This is a text you sent to Chad 3 months ago. Read it out loud." Jessica's face went pale as she recognized the message. "Not doing that." "Then I'll read it. Danny's so pathetic. He actually thinks I still love him. Can't wait until we can be together and I can stop pretending to care about his boring life." The silence that followed was broken only by the sound of traffic from the main road. Chad shifted uncomfortably, and I realized he was finally understanding the depth of what Jessica had done. "You shared our private conversations," I continued. "You mocked our marriage, our daughter, our entire life together. You turned our relationship into entertainment for your affair. And now you want me to just let it go?" "That was private," Jessica whispered. "So was our marriage. So were our vows. So was the trust I placed in you for 15 years. Chad stepped forward again, but this time his aggression felt forced. "Look, Danny, we get it. You're hurt. But Jessica's moving on, and you need to accept that." "I've accepted it. What I haven't accepted is the idea that actions don't have consequences." "What's that supposed to mean?" I smiled, and both of them took a step back. "It means that tomorrow morning, Sandra Kellerman is going to receive a very interesting package. Copies of every text message, every photo, Every piece of evidence that shows exactly what kind of person she's representing. I'm also sending copies to the State Bar Association, since Jessica used her position at the law firm to facilitate her affair. You can't do that, Jessica said, but her voice lacked conviction. I can, and I will, unless, of course, you'd like to reconsider my counteroffer. Chad grabbed Jessica's arm. Come on, Jess, we don't need this. Let him have his petty revenge. But Jessica was staring at me with something that might have been respect. You've changed, Danny. No, I replied. I've just stopped pretending to be someone I'm not to make other people comfortable. She nodded slowly, and for a moment, I saw the woman I'd fallen in love with 20 years ago. Smart, strong, capable of recognizing when she'd been outmaneuvered. Fine, she said. I'll take your deal. Chad stared at her in shock. Jessica, you can't be serious. I'm serious. Danny's right. Actions have consequences. I made my choices, and now I have to live with them. But the supervised visitation is what I deserve, Jessica finished. I put my daughter through hell for a man who isn't worth it. I need to earn back the right to be her mother. Chad's face went through several expressions before settling on outrage. So that's it. You're just going to let him win. He's not winning, Jessica said quietly. We're all losing. The only question is how much. Chad stormed back to his car, shouting something about weak women and spineless lawyers. Jessica watched him go with an expression I couldn't quite read. He's not going to stick around, I told her. Men like Chad don't handle adversity well. I know. She looked at me with sad eyes. I'm sorry, Danny, for all of it. You deserved better. Yes, I did, but so did you. So did Ava. She nodded and walked back to her car. As she drove away, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months. Peace. The divorce was finalized 6 weeks later. Jessica kept her word, admitting to adultery and accepting the custody arrangement. Chad had indeed disappeared, moving back to his parents' house in another state when the reality of supporting a divorced woman with a teenager became clear. Ava was angry with both of us for a while, but she was a resilient kid. We started family counseling, and slowly, we began rebuilding our relationship. Jessica's supervised visits were awkward at first, but she was trying, and that mattered. 6 months after the divorce was final, I ran into Jessica at the grocery store. She looked different, tired, but somehow more authentic than she'd been in years. How are you doing? I asked. Getting by. I got a job at a smaller firm. The pay's not great, but it's honest work. And Chad? She laughed, but there was no humor in it. Chad found someone else, someone younger and less complicated. I'm sorry, don't be. You tried to warn me, in your way. I just wasn't ready to listen. We stood there for a moment, two people who'd shared a life and destroyed it, trying to find something to say. Ava's doing well, I offered. I know. Thank you for that. For taking care of her when I couldn't take care of myself. She's our daughter. It's what parents do. Jessica nodded, tears starting to form. I miss her. I miss both of you. I know, but this is where we are now. Yes, she agreed. This is where we are. She walked away, and I watched her go, feeling something that might have been forgiveness beginning to grow in the space where my anger used to live. That night, I made pancakes for dinner, and Ava helped me flip them. We ate in comfortable silence, two people learning how to be a family again. Outside, it was starting to snow, the first real snow of the season, and our house felt warm and safe and ours. I thought about Jessica, alone in her apartment, paying the price for choices that had seemed so important at the time. I thought about Chad, probably already working on his next victim. And I thought about myself, a man who'd learned that sometimes the only way to save yourself is to stop trying to save everyone else. The phone rang, interrupting my thoughts. It was Mrs. Patterson from down the street. Danny? I hope I'm not bothering you, but I wanted you to know, there's a nice young woman who just moved in next door to me. A teacher, recently divorced, has a daughter about Ava's age. I thought maybe, when you're ready, you might like to meet her. I smiled, looking at Ava, who was pretending not to listen while she scrolled through her phone. Thanks, Mrs. Patterson. Maybe someday. But right now, I'm pretty happy with the family I've got. After I hung up, Ava looked at me with those sharp green eyes. You could date someone, Dad. I wouldn't mind. Someday, maybe. But there's no rush. She nodded and went back to her phone. Outside, the snow was falling harder now, covering the world in clean white silence. I watched it accumulate on the windowsill and thought about second chances, about the difference between justice and revenge, about the strange ways that losing everything can sometimes feel like winning. Tomorrow, I'd open the lot and sell cars to people who needed them. Ava would go to school and come home with stories about her day. Jessica would continue building her new life, one careful step at a time. And I'd continue learning how to be the man I was meant to be, instead of the man I thought everyone else wanted me to be. It wasn't the life I'd planned, but it was mine. And for the first time in years, that felt like enough.